From a ghost ship all the way to the rarest lobster in the world, here are the top 5 mysterious things discovered by fishermen. Number 5 on this list is the tiger shark detective. I've named this the tiger shark detective because the catching of this shark actually played a crucial role in a murder mystery. It all started when 2 fishermen back in 1935 caught a tiger shark off the coast of Australia. They brought the shark back to shore and donated it to an aquarium. This shark was in the local news at this point and had quite the name for itself. A week into it being at this aquarium during a live feeding where there was actual literal onlookers watching, this shark coughed up what looked to be a human arm. The police obviously got involved at this point and had to do some investigating to see how it got there. They determined through a series of tests that the arm had not been bitten off by the shark, but that it had been chopped off by something else and that the shark had swallowed it whole. The story would have been over, but the arm had something on it that distinguished it from other arms. It had a tattoo. This was a rare tattoo, and back then tattoos themselves were pretty rare altogether. Investigators soon realized that it was the same tattoo that a former police informant had on his arm, Jim Smith. He had gone missing a while back and they had no idea what happened to him. They started piecing it all together and looked into what potentially went wrong. They then realized that Jim had tried to blackmail the wrong people and it hadn't gone so great for him. The murderers then killed Jim and disposed of his body, but kept the arm because they knew that the tattoo would be able to lead people to the conclusion that it was Jim. They anchored this arm down and threw it in the water, not suspecting that a tiger shark would eat it and then later be caught by a fisherman. Eventually, the police tracked down the killers and brought them to justice, and it was all because these 2 fishermen fished up a tiger shark that just happened to eat some pretty important evidence. Number 4 on this list is the Chimera Lobster. Catching a lobster isn't really that impressive, but what if you caught a lobster that looked as if it came straight from another dimension? A little bit more mysterious if you ask me. Cracked writes, when Alan Robinson headed out to sea in Bar Harbor, Maine in July of 2006, he, like all commercial fishermen, was hoping for a little luck. What he hauled into his boat that day was a 1 in 50 million discovery. It looks like a fish torture delicacy, but it's actually a natural phenomenon. Well, if you consider something that happens practically never a natural phenomenon. A chimera occurs when 2 zygotes with different cells, and sometimes from different species, combine together to form a single creature or person. Yeah, there have been human chimeras who are the genetic equivalent of having non-identical twins in one body. Unfortunately, the human versions are far less dramatic looking than what you might expect based on the lobster. We're talking legendary Pokemon levels of rare here, guys. Like, this lobster is something seriously special. And just look at that thing. It's split directly down the middle. One half looks cooked and ready to serve, and the other half looks like a regular everyday lobster. This is just one way that this phenomenon can appear. There have been reports where lobsters can come out as blue before, or even harlequin. It's a very mysterious event when it happens, and one of the rarest on the entire planet. Number 3 on this list is the one-eyed shark. So before we even get into this entry, let's pull up a picture of what I'm talking about so you guys can see. This is the shark that I'm talking about, and it looks pretty fake, right? Well, that's exactly what the internet came out and said, but it turns out that this one-eyed freak of a shark thing might actually be legit. Let's pull up a few of the later shots of this shark and see how you guys feel now. Cracked talks about these other pictures and says, in these later shots, some time has passed and the creature is noticeably a little worse for wear in comparison to the originals. The gentleman in the pictures above is Dr. Philippe Galvin, one of Mexico's most renowned shark researchers. While it was reported by Pisces Fleet that Dr. Galvin had seen, studied, and produced an initial paper on this otherworldly animal and was awaiting review and publication, skeptics still voiced their disdain, complaining now that the shark had to be a creation of special effects artists and that it didn't have gill slits. But the skeptics were soon put to bed because apparently when a pregnant bull shark was recently caught by a commercial fisherman in the Sea of Cortez, the albino cyclops shark was one of the unborn fetuses found inside. Pretty crazy stuff if you ask me, guys. Also kind of creepy that the one-eyed shark is just an unborn fetus. I guess nature really do just be like that sometimes. Number 2 on this list is a skull. Finding body parts in the ocean, or actually anywhere in the world, has got to be pretty jarring. I'd imagine that probably the most jarring of those body parts, though, would be a human skull. Reeling that up on your fishing line when you're expecting to catch some rainbow trout has got to be quite the shock. Well, this case is actually way way worse than that. Imagine going fishing up a human skull, and then having that human skull literally be the skull of one of your former best friends. Yeah, that's right guys. What I just described there is exactly what went down to Barry Hunter in 2007. He found the skull of Brian Allison, someone who had gone missing several years prior and someone who Barry would often go drinking with. The commercial trawler, the Jan Denise II, was found at the bottom of the ocean several years prior. Brian Allison was on that boat, and it was assumed that he perished when the ship went down, but his body, it was never recovered. His family, ever since that ship had gone down, were truly in a horrible place mentally. They inherently understood that Brian had most likely died at the bottom of the ocean, but without ever receiving confirmation, it truly left them in this horrible gray area that they could never escape. This finding from Barry finally gave them the closure that they needed to move on with their lives. Still, it must have been absolutely horrifying for Barry, who actually found the thing and then later realized who it was. And finally, number 1 on this list is the ghost ship. This is definitely not something that you and your buddies would want to find if you're out for a relaxing fishing trip. Rocket Geeks writes, encountering other ships at sea during a fishing trip isn't such a rare occurrence, but what if they're ghost ships with their occupants still on board? In 2016, 2 fishermen noticed a strange vessel drifting about 50 miles away from the Philippines. Disturbed by the ship's appearance, they decided to board it to see if anyone was on it. What they found was the decomposing body of German explorer Fritz Behorhat, who was last seen in 2009, which had been almost perfectly preserved by the salty air and dry winds. What's crazy to me is that this guy's ship was able to just drift through the ocean for so long without being spotted at all. Apparently, after doing an autopsy on Fritz, he had died on his boat of a heart attack years ago. His boat obviously wasn't anchored or anything when he died, so the wind and the water just took it. During that entire time, it never capsized or hit land. It was just floating in the water for years, letting his body mummify completely. I think this story, more than any that we've looked at today, is just a perfect example at how massive the ocean can be. For years, an entire yacht carrying a dead human being was just going around without anyone seeing it. Who knows how far this boat had traveled during that time or what it had seen? It also begs the question, how many more of these boats are out there right now just floating around? The ocean is a scary and massive place, guys. These are just a few of the mysteries we've found in it, but I guarantee there are plenty more. But there you have it, folks. That is our list of the top 5 mysterious things discovered by fishermen. Please let me know in the comments down below what you thought about this list and some other crazy things discovered by fishermen that you know about. Also, please hit the like and subscribe button. Thank you so much for watching. I've been your host, Nicholas Playlog, and I'll catch you next time.